Adria Cherie Marcy, aka Adria English, is so full of doggy doo-doo. It's ridiculous. I mean, look, Time to Talk podcast. Talk politics, trending stuff, random this, that, and the other. This is a break from the political stuff. But I have done stuff on Allie Carter, who is a real victim of the Diddy situation. So this is like a Diddy update, Diddy accuser, Diddy alleged accuser, victim. I put it in quotes for a reason. There's a reason for this. Let's get into it. Time to Talk podcast. We're going to get into Adria English and how ridiculously insane this woman is and how crazy her allegations are. And she's making the rounds because she's broke, old, washed up, and never amounted to anything. So she's furious. So we're going to talk about it. Time to Talk podcast. Subscribe now if you haven't subscribed. Happy to have you here. Let's get into it. Look, this is a woman. I came across, I want to give the motivation for this because I will not do a video where it's just straight me expressing some sort of animosity towards someone or hating on somebody for no apparent reason. I don't see the point in that. It's a waste of time, really. This woman is a waste of time. But I say this because there are tons of victims, real victims, genuine victims of Diddy, Sean Puffy Diddy Combs. There are a lot of victims. Allie Carter being probably one of the more prominent ones, and one that I did a feature on this channel. I did a video on that, so find that if you haven't seen it. That woman's story is credible. There are a lot of victims out there. Cassie was a victim, no question. People will speculate that Kim Porter, the late Kim Porter, was a victim and even met her demise at the hands of Diddy. There are plenty of young people, young women and young men who suffered at the hands of Diddy, and plenty of the other people who were surrounded him and were part of that circle and part of that life. I don't need to get into whether it was, these satanic things or what was going on and all these details. We don't need to name names and speculate on who was there and who wasn't there and who's guilty, who's not guilty. I don't need the views for that. What I'm really addressing here is the fact that a woman like this comes along, and for some reason she's getting attention. For some reason, because as I've said in the previous videos where I talked about Diddy stuff, it's like you could do a Diddy video every single day with all these people and all the possible angles you can come up with. Diddy, accuser, names a person she saw on a boat. Oh, today, Diddy, we heard this. Oh, we heard that. Here's another person. It doesn't stop. So this woman is making the rounds. She's the latest one to be making the rounds, and she's being pimped just the right way by her management. There's another guy named Lionel B, whatever his name is. It was her manager. Whoever's putting her up to this or manipulating her into it, because apparently she doesn't do anything on her own. She's manipulated into everything. But at the same point, she talks about what how sensual of a person she is, and she's always been that way. This is nonsense. This is nonsense, and I'm addressing this again because there are real victims. There are real people who suffered at the hands of that man and that lifestyle. And there's real trauma to be compensated for. This girl is a disgruntled ex-adult worker, ex-wannabe singer/rapper who basically went around and did as many people as she could as a groupie so she could get into the business. And I do not say this out of my mouth speculatively. I'm not judging her on my own. These are her own words. She has a line where she says, literally, I put in extra work sexually. This is coming out of her own mouth. So this is a woman who, if you watch any of the interviews, and the last one I saw, let me just put it out there. The last interview I saw, which sort of motivated this video, was like the final straw, was on Sean Atwood. I believe he's a British bloke across the pond there, who's got a podcast with almost 1 million subscribers. Shout out to him, I guess. But I think personally, she's more a victim of that podcast and of people that are using her right now for clicks and likes, because he had her on there on a live and he promoting it as like, oh, the first live with her, and she's on there hamming it up and telling her story. And he's just sitting there. He's sitting back watching her make a total fool of herself. But mind you, in the comment section and all in the live chat, oh, prayers for her. I'm like, are you people kidding me? Are you all like, you're you're equally as gullible as you were for Kamala Harris? Like anything sells to you people? Anything just sells. Because this is a disgruntled woman. I don't even want to get into the story about Beyonce, and apparently Sasha Fierce, Jay got that, stole it from her, and wanted Beyonce to be like her. Then she's telling the story of how she could have been Beyonce. She would have been Beyonce. No, you wouldn't have. You have no talent. You clearly haven't had any talent. You clearly, all the stuff you were doing for men and women back in the day, on your back or on your knees, whatever it is you were doing, you clearly didn't do, either you didn't do enough or you weren't that good, and clearly you didn't have enough talent to make it anywhere. So, like, really, what's the deal? So you're basically an ex. She admits that she spent a certain period of time in the adult film industry, which she claims her ex-boyfriend, Jake Steed, a former porn star, manipulated her into. She got into it. Mind you, on this podcast, she promotes the video material. Like, she's trying to act like she's Christian. She's found a new life in God, and she's blessed, and she talk all this spiritual stuff. She'll interlace the spiritual stuff in between all the stories. They caught me with a thing in my mouth, and my parents. And she'll talk about the porn stuff as if it's some part of her past that she wishes to forget. Meanwhile, on this podcast, she gave you her porn name and directed you to see it, and didn't just do it once. She gave it out as if she was giving out her Twitter handle, X handle, or whatever. In this case, her XXX handle. She gave it out, like making sure you knew it, spelled it out and everything, phonetically, like unbelievable. And on top of all that, she's promoting a book, which, mind you, she hasn't written and doesn't have a publisher, and no one's interested. Yet she's telling this guy she's looking for publishers. She's doing shout outs, asking to work with people. Oh, but don't come at me on no, it better be $1 million deals. This is a broke, has-been crackhead woman who was part of the lifestyle of Diddy and that whole thing back in the day. She was a groupie. She was one of the people at the party that was involved with these people. She's, as far as I'm concerned, she's guilty by association, because she knew, and she was probably part of the whole thing of getting women drugged and getting them involved in that lifestyle and doing things for Diddy, because all she wanted was a record deal. If you listen to this woman long enough, you find out, like, she just sounds like someone who wanted a record deal and it never happened. She uses the words, I did all this, I just wanted to be compensated. I thought I was going to get something out of it. You didn't get anything out of it. And now you're 46, 47 years old, you're unattractive, and you've got nothing. And you saw an opportunity with this Diddy situation, and now you're running around making the rounds, and for some strange reason, either your management or your pimp or whoever it is pushing you, and somehow podcasters are getting you on there to tell your story, and we're all feeling bad for you. It's tragic. This guy Sean Atwood had another guy on named Tommy, I don't know, and one of his blokes from England or someone else. Maybe he's got another podcast, I don't know. And this guy gets on after she gets off. He gets on like, oh, it's a lot, it's bad to see people, speaking against people like this, and we need to embrace them. No, we don't. There are real victims. There are real people who suffered. There are real people. There were women at those parties who were minors, who were trafficked. And those are the people we need to find, pay attention to, and do deep investigations into, making sure we find them justice. Not some random adult film worker, adult club worker in New York City who admits to being at parties as a groupie looking for a payoff, getting down with people for financial gain and for notoriety, and then found herself with nothing, and now suddenly is looking for a payday and going to sell a book and a tell-all. Not to mention 90% of her stories are totally nonsense. The Beyonce story, nonsense. The fact that Diddy has menages with his mom, or she's not his mom, and coming up with all these stories about the mother, and like, it's just salacious nonsense for her to get a spotlight, and she's using that spotlight on these podcasts to ask people, hit me up, Sexy Red, hit me up, Cardi B, hit me up, let's do a song together. Ain't no one doing a song with you. You don't even have anything out. You have no history of singing, dancing, doing anything entertaining. All your history is on your back. You have no history, and that's the only thing we can find. Mind you, I went, of course I went. When she gave out her adult name, I went, just like she said, to go look for her, and I looked for her, and she's terrible. She wasn't even good at that. She would be considered low level. If you were looking at adult content and you happen to scroll through whatever adult content site you visit and you happen to come across one of her videos, you'd be like, click, next, like garbage. So she wasn't even good at that. So I'm not even how long. No wonder she didn't last so long and no one wanted to give her a record deal when she was doing what she was doing at these parties. She didn't have any talent. She wants to be a rapper and singer. She's promoting it. She's literally saying the words. So I don't know how. I just don't know how people are putting her on. And what's worse, actually, I understand why they're putting her on. Again, this Sean Atwood and anyone else who's putting this young woman, I shouldn't say young woman, this old has-been on their show to claim that she deserves compensation and she's going through PTSD and all these other things and she was traumatized. They're using her to get the views and the clicks. Essentially what's going on. That's what they're doing. I don't understand. I just don't get the people in the comments, though. I don't get the people in the comments. I don't get. Majority of the people should be seeing what I'm seeing. Here's a woman who's admitting to her past, admitting to everything. Now, I also want to let me just say this, as mean as it may seem I'm being, because if you look at the video I did prior on Adria English, I wasn't so mean. I was skeptical, and I said that it requires some research. Well, I've done the research, and now I'm just that much more upset about it because, again, this is taking away from the real victims. This hurts Allie Carter. This hurts all the other people, all the other young women and the young men, the minor children that were involved with that man and with many of those parties and all the different things that took place. This hurts that. That's what this does. So I'm sorry. I'm not going to have some random washed up wannabe looking for money, some broke chick looking for money, trying to sell a book. I'm gonna make a record and sell a book deal and make a movie. Nobody wants to make a movie with you. You are unattractive and old. You're unattractive, you're old, you're has-been, you're a wash-up. The best you're gonna get out of this is 5 minutes of fame from these random podcasts, and that's it. And I'll tell you what, I'll invite you onto mine. If you want to come on here, I won't even put it in the description. I just want to get you on just so I can question you the right way. Let's not do the political thing where you show up on podcasts where they're all kissing your butt. Let's put you somewhere where you're going to be forced to answer real questions, and we'll get to the truth. Because this is bad, and I don't like the fact that this is actually hurting the real victims. I've said what I had to say. I've said what I had to say. No bones about it. Go in the comments below and you let me know if you've seen any of this girl's interviews, if you've listened to any of this, if you believe any of this. If you haven't seen the Allie Carter video, I suggest you check that out. That's on my channel. Watch that. If you don't watch it on my channel, find it. Find Allie Carter and her story. And there are others. There's probably dozens, probably hundreds of others that are real victims. Okay? Do not let this stuff taint or take away from what really took place and what real victims are out there and what real trauma and real PTSD is. And I'll make another point. I'm not going to suggest that because of her lifestyle and because she was a willing participant in all that, that perhaps she wasn't taken advantage of here and there. Perhaps she thought she was only going to get with 3 guys in that room and 4 guys came in. Yeah, possible. It's possible. And, heart goes out to you if you've ever had a moment where you were in the parties and you thought you were going to get a record deal. You thought you were going to be a big rapper and it didn't happen after you did what you did. Talking about fluids and stuff. Yeah. Well, you dealt with a lot of fluid, obviously. And apparently you didn't get much in return. That's on you. I've said enough. Time to Talk podcast. We'll revisit this at some point or we won't. I want to see where this whole thing goes. Again, I'm much more concerned with the real victims and finding out their stories and when something is going to be done from a media standpoint and from a legal perspective, who's going to investigate these crimes and who's really going to spotlight it. You don't see this stuff on 60 Minutes. You don't see this on CNN. You don't see this with David Muir and ABC. You don't see any special reports with Lindsay Davis. No one's reporting on this. Who's reporting on it? YouTube. People on YouTube. And then we get people like this who are totally wasting time. I've said enough. Time to Talk podcast. Subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you on the next one.